I always had 5 favorite words: while, although, since, unless, until. And I would put them up on the board, whether it's a chalk or whiteboards now, fancy boards, because sometimes we don't know how to say it. And I said, all right, I want you to start a sentence with one of those words.
Okay.
While walking across the snow, I could hear the dance. That's like Shakespeare in grade 2.
Wow. Hello and welcome to Coffee Connections podcast. My name is Cindy Chase and we have a very special show for you today. We are on location and let me read about my guest, Dr. Shaun Hains. Dr. Shaun Hains was chosen as an inspiring woman of color by the Women's Office of the American Psychology Association, Global Clinical Practice Network, WHO, the World Health Organization. She's got a company called Hains Consulting. She's a consultant with the Global Clinical Practice Network. She is also a member of the, now I Googled this word, 𝐷𝐷𝐻𝐿𝐬.
You did well.
Did I?
Yeah.
And is also a member of the 𝐷𝐷𝐻𝐿𝐬 Métis Nation. As an Indigenous person, she has worked successfully within health and education. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for allowing us to come into your home.
You're very welcome.
Cheers. With a good coffee.
Thank you.
So I did a little bit of research and I do see that you are from Ontario.
Yes.
Whereabouts?
I was born in a place called 𝐷𝐷𝐻𝐿𝐬.
Okay.
Caribou in Cree is 𝐷𝐷𝐻𝐿𝐬. So it's a town of the Caribou, and they would come down close. It's geographically about 2 hours northwest of Thunder Bay.
Okay.
So very close to Lake Superior.
Oh, okay.
And I spent a lot of my youth in a canoe.
Really?
Yeah, I loved it very much, and came out here to go to university and literally wore my mucklucks right on campus, and everybody just sort of took it in stride.
Was that in the 70s?
Yeah, 1974.
Well, isn't that when everybody had flowers in their hair too?
Maybe just a little bit late. I didn't have flowers in my hair,
Oh.
but the beadwork was nice.
So let's go back to your upbringing. I'm from Ontario myself.
Oh, wow.
Did I mention that? I'm from St. Catharines, Ontario.
Okay, well, that's a famous place.
Yes, yes. Not for a good thing though, is it?
Well, it is. I was thinking about Ohio. Ohio is just the other side of the lake,
Yes.
and that's where slavery just came to a place, and they said no slavery here. And that was around the proclamation of 1763 time. The Americans were just forming a country. And in St. Catharines right now in Cornwall area, you'll see a beautiful statue of one of my grandmothers, Molly Brandt, who guided the Mohawk people into Ontario.
Really?
And said, we're going to live here together now. So it's the movement of the Mohawk people from Ohio into Canada. And of course, we still don't have the War of 1812 and the French and the British part of it, but there was a human rights part of that was just a no. Where it just slavery stops here. And that was in Ohio, and it's just the other side of the lake. And so that's a really important place when you think of where you're from, and how important that history, those purple clams I was showing you,
Yes.
that she carried those purple clams right across into Canada as it was forming later on.
Do you know who got those? Those were your grandmother?
Yeah.
Really?
Her statue has those purple clams on it even now. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's a really important part of her brother Joseph Brandt was a part of that. That concept of a loyalist, but you're still in the United States, so you're not, but we didn't know what to explain it. And so it was really a place, where in Ohio they just said, no slavery. I
also read that you were very active in sports.
Yeah.
So what did you do for sports?
Well, when I first came out here, I'm not that tall.
Yeah.
But I played volleyball and tried out for the junior volleyball team and made it. But some of the players also played field hockey, which, you know, we used to play ice hockey on the lakes.
Yeah.
And so I made that team too.
Wow.
And so I was playing volleyball one day, and the fencing coach was watching me. He said, Shaun, why don't you come and practice fencing? I go, yeah, sure.
Wow.
So I made that team as well.
How old were you at this time? Were you in university?
18, 19, 20, yeah.
Wow.
So I was on 3 varsity teams.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I ended up coaching in the high schools at 𝐷𝐵𝐿𝐬𝐿 is where I started. And
What were you coaching?
field hockey and volleyball, and then
wow.
we won the Alberta Games, and I played for Alberta provincial teams.
Wow.
Stopped traveling. Oh, it was quite a few years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you traveled, the school teams would travel and
Yeah,
you'd compete?
U of A teams.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, 1 weekend off a year, I think.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was busy. But it was an opportunity to learn. You see, I love to learn. And when I came to the University of Alberta, it was like the encyclopedia was alive. Like there was a building for every book. And I thought I could learn science here, and like it was so huge and enormous.
Right.
I took 8 courses a semester, and you're only supposed to take 5, but I didn't know that.
Wow.
I was just having so much fun learning, and
Right.
it just went in.
Like a sponge.
Yeah. And
Wow.
so that was my experience, because I could learn
Right.
whatever I wanted to. And I started with a physical education degree, and
Yeah.
then went into education
Right.
and have a major in science and English, which is kind of different. But I can tell you a funny story.
Do it.
So part of, while I was coaching, they said, if you're going into coaching, you should go into psychology and counseling. I said, you know, that makes sense.
Right.
You know, to learn how to
Yes.
listen well and
Communicate
so,
your
yeah.
instructions.
And so I took how to test my IQ score. And this is the 70s. And so I was learning how to test my own IQ.
Right.
And then they called me into the office of the deans at the education faculty building at the U of A.
Right.
3 assistant deans were in the room and me.
Uh-oh.
And I go, I must have done something wrong.
Yes, exactly.
But I had a very unusual IQ. And it's very high, but it's flat. Like there's no peak or valley.
Meaning you know a lot about everything?
Well, that's what they couldn't explain it. And so they asked me to explain it. I thought, well, how do you explain your own IQ?
Yeah.
So I said, you know, I had about the same mark in all my grade 12 courses. It might be just the way I am.
Yeah.
But I often wondered about culture or assessment, or what did that mean? So when I was teaching, I really studied how students learned. And, you know, are they needing a bit more of this and that? And I think that it made me a better teacher, because I was studying how the student was learning.
So when you're studying how the student is learning, so is this the whole class or individual students, how they learn, and you see a pattern for somebody that, you know, like nowadays ADD is, you know, the phrase that everybody coins.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I realized is, you know, it's not easy reading Shakespeare. When you're scared, it's even harder to read Shakespeare.
Right.
And so I would have a blank piece of paper and let them draw what they think they were reading, you know, to give it a context.
Right.
Sort of like spatial awareness.
Right.
You know, how can you imagine a play without seeing the play?
Right.
And it was difficult for me, because when I read, I have a picture in my head of what I'm reading.
Mm-hmm.
But people, when they're scared or new to English, they don't have any pictures in their head, and they go, how do you understand?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so without acting the play out for a diploma exam.
Right.
So when they practiced drawing, their comprehension scores went up 50, 70% right away.
Wow.
I thought, well, that worked. I said, but we have to remember to keep that picture in our head so we can imagine, see that story happening.
Right.
And we can understand the context of what the author's trying to tell the world. The students from other countries who were speaking different languages, they said, you know, Dr. Hains, our language is like that too. It puts pictures in our head, but when we're scared, we don't.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll just have to learn to relax on the exams.
Mm-hmm.
So that really helped. And I always had 5 favorite words: while, although, since, unless, until. And I would put them up on the board, you know, whether it's a chalk or whiteboards now, fancy boards, because sometimes we don't know how to say it. We go, and then I came in and I'm scared, can't you tell?
Yeah.
So the principal said, Shaun, we want you to do that in grade 2. I go, I'm a high school person. I don't know how to teach grade 2. But they said, no, give it a try with our grade 2 students because they're brilliant, Shaun.
Wow.
I said, okay, I'll put my 5 words up there like I know what I'm doing. And I said, all right, I want you to start a sentence with one of those words.
Okay.
While walking across the snow, I could hear the dance. That's like Shakespeare in grade 2.
Wow.
I go, whoa,
Wow.
There's no, and you know, that
Right.
kind of. And so what the principals were showing me is they had the capacity for the complexity. Nobody taught them where to put the comma in the sentence.
Right.
Nobody taught them the subordinate conjunction to go with it. And all of a sudden they were writing amazing sentences.
Wow.
But their behavior slowed down because they could explain it. Although I don't know if you understand, I'm going to try hard to explain what I want to say.
Right.
You know, so they would have a context in it. And the principals were thrilled. And that's when the eagles started flying over the schools.
Wow.
We had the Fort McMurray fire. We were all terrified.
Right.
And the eagles began to fly. And I thought, we must be doing something right. It's our way as Native people knowing our land is validating something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're doing something connected
It's a
here.
sign to tell you
And they just kept flying and flying, and I just kept recording. We're doing something right and didn't know what it was.
Did the kids see them as well?
Oh yeah, I was sitting in the office, and they came flying in out of that playground. They go, Dr. Shaun, Dr. Shaun, Dr. Shaun. I go, what is it? Mika went right over our playground.
Wow.
I go, whoa. I go, did you do that? Did you?
Wow.
Gave them credit for
Right.
it because it's their school. And so there was a connection made.
Mm-hmm.
And we would go out some days while we're still too scared. We would sing to the trees, you know, because we can't sing in public yet. We're too nervous. And so we'd go, ah, because the trees didn't care. We would just sing. And the geese would fly over, and then the eagles would fly. So the connection.
Yeah.
And then later on, we would have shawls, or we would dance, yeah, in our soft shoe way, and just be who we are, gentle that way.
Yeah. So the 5 favorite words, how did that work with the older kids?
Well, the lowest mark of any student taking a diploma exam in grade 12 was 76.
Oh. Wow.
And I had students from 𝐷𝐷𝐿 come. And I listened to how they wrote, and I'd say, I'm going to go native for a minute, okay? And they'd all laugh. They'd go, sure. I said, you have to imagine being an eagle up on a cliff, and the salmon are right there. And you're going to dive down and grab that salmon, but make sure it's not too big, because sometimes those big pink salmon will drown an eagle. And then we just pick them up off the shoreline, like next time fish something smaller, eh?
Yes, exactly.
But when you go down and grab that salmon, it's an idea. You're grabbing an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then you come back, but you live it, you feel it, and you flesh the wisdom out of that idea. And then you have to go fish again, because you have to fish into a book. You have to fish into something we've read that means something. And then you pull that wisdom out, and those wisdoms come together. Mm-hmm. And that's how we got our 76%
Wow.
from the flying eagle method.
Wow.
Because they would be alive when they were writing. And that's when, wow, I'm on the cliff watching the salmon, and I dive.
And it's almost
soaring,
like you were
gliding.
giving them permission to fly.
Yeah. And be precise in it. And,
Right. How many years ago was that?
well, I retired right during COVID in 2020. So it was 4 years ago, I guess, that I was
Yeah.
still teaching.
Wow.
My 5 words. 𝐌𝐚𝐬𝐿 was the first school where 100% of the Native students graduated grade 12. First time.
Wow.
And then
W.P. Wagner.
Yeah, and then a few other schools. I just kept the pattern going.
Wow. So you are a consultant with WHO.
Yeah.
World Health Organization. How did that come about?
It was a time where Canada was looking at the UN Bill of Rights, the Indigenous Peoples Bill of Rights, and Dr. Brenda Gunn and different professionals looked at the United Nations Indigenous Peoples Bill of Rights, you know, and signing that and being a part of the United Nations for Indigenous people.
Mm-hmm.
And so as that was transpiring, we were looking at culture and human rights. And it was a matter of time for another dialogue, ethics.
Mm-hmm.
So we can have law about human rights.
Mm-hmm.
But ethics is different. It's like we're all trying to do the right thing but don't know how.
Right. And
so Ottawa in the past had asked me to help write ethics documents. And in a weekend, or maybe we'll give it 6 months. So I became a little more precise in the language of what does it mean to work well together in Ottawa. We need to have some sort of standards or principles. And so we began with do no harm. Can we just not harm each other while we're meeting? So I'm in contact with Dr. Jeffrey Reed with the Global Clinical Practice Network, and who's with the WHO. And we begin a process of trying to explain the ethics with the land, because I'm not just a psychologist, I'm a native psychologist.
Right.
And so when I look at the gentleness of the deer or the sash, the ways of the gentle canoe in the water, there's an implicit, I don't want to harm the land.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, that really means a lot. And when I look at Alberta, for example, I'm seeing eagles, I'm seeing bears, I'm seeing moose, I'm seeing deer, that we as a province or as a country have begun to really take seriously protecting our environment. Like we have road signs that says, watch out for the moose, watch out for the deer.
Right.
We care enough to monitor this. And I think as human beings, we've come to a place where our environment matters enough to put the sign up. And as Native people, that part's just there anyway, that we're carrying the eagle feather as a way of honoring that safeguard with the land and the hunt and the fish, that we don't lose our food, you know, because the soil is our food. And so when I'm working with the Global Clinical Practice Network, I'm a Canadian, and I was fortunate enough in 2017, the WHO developed their first ethics code. On World Psychology Day, Africa's there, Canada's there, all the continents are there, and Jeffrey Reed is leading.
Where is there? Where is it?
We're on Zoom because we're in the middle of, you know, a world of COVID going on.
Yes.
But in the middle of it, the ethics have been defined by the WHO, which is huge.
Yes.
And I never realized how important our conversations were.
Mm.
So as Africa's turn to lead, they stop. And they turned to Canada and they said, Canada, can you lead?
Wow.
So all our dignitaries, you know, our Minister of Health and our, you know, we're just taking the lead now.
Wow.
And they have this whole procedure where one continent leads, then the other. And I go, oh, we're leading, and I'm watching.
Wow.
But the reason they stop is to allow a Native woman to lift an eagle feather, light the sage and prayer, and pray.
Wow.
So that prayer is included and culture in the ethics.
Mm.
And Canada led the ethics for the WHO.
That's amazing.
And so that was a huge moment to just the world stopped.
Yes.
And World Psychology Day to let Canada lead.
Wow.
And so I think it's an accomplishment that's not just with the land, it's with the land and the people. But I didn't realize the world is noticing us. And so being able to write about the land and working with the land as a part of our ethics, we don't want to not just harm each other, we don't want to harm the chickadees and the songbirds and the ducks and the geese and everything else. We're just that way. And that's part of that eagle feather.
Nice. What does this represent?
Well, I'm Métis, and this is a sash. And the sashes were used for, you could wrap it around your forehead and put a pack on it if you were carrying furs. Or you could hold a child. You know, you could wrap the baby in it.
Right.
So often they were used as a way of carrying. So it's a symbol. It's a purposeful process of, you know, active Métis, and it's an active, purposeful sash. You could wear it to keep warm around your neck.
Do the colors represent anything in particular?
Well, they do, and I think people always have their own version of it. But that light blue, that's my UN color.
Is it? And you're wearing a little bit of it.
So when I see my sash, I've put purpose into these colors, because not is it only about peaceful coexistence with First Nations or Inuit people and peace with amongst ourselves as Métis. The colors mean different things because of my lifespan, my work. So right now I'm in this light blue time where that's the color of the UN flag, and I'm busy with the global clinical practice. So I wear my sash. I wear it in my work. I don't always physically have it on.
Right.
But
you mentally
it means,
and emotionally.
Yeah, it's connected.
What does the gold represent to you?
Could be the sands that I would put my canoe alongside near the rapids.
Right.
The teaching of a portage is so life important, you know, because the rapids would be there. But a portage is about taking care, because you don't always know what's in front of you.
Right.
You don't always know the depth of those rapids. And so to be able to pick the canoe up and put your pack on and be careful around it. And so the goal to me is about the sands around the lakes.
Right.
And the black could be a black bear, you know, the red could be the Red River, could be the red cliffs of Thunder Bay. They've got big red rock cliffs there.
And then the white.
And the white, could be the snow,
Right.
And the snowshoes, Right.
The
Works better if
froth
you
on the
wear
water.
the snowshoes, otherwise you go down,
Yes.
you know, and how to go through that.
Right. Wow.
It's also a reminder of our extreme climate. And when I lived in the wilderness areas and that extreme climate, and caring for each other, that we would winter well was a quality. Are you okay? How are you doing? That extra care that, why are you even asking? That's just the way we do it. And so defining that winter well. We winter well people. We care for each other during the winter. It's cold, man.
Right.
And to make sure all is okay. And so when you look at our world, we still have our buffalo, just barely. Our eagles are back. You know, we had DDT. There's a few animals we almost lost.
Wow.
You think of how hard some of us are working. Is that endangered? Is that endangered? You know, what's not endangered? And so I think we're beginning to see signs of a recovery. But somehow in North America, we're taking care again. So that says something about people. We've paused alongside wilderness enough to do this. And so I think it's increasing our awareness. And, you know, I think we know some of the big species, like we know what a bear looks like or a moose and deer look like. But some of these unusual animals that we'll look at, oh, wow, what is that? And learning about it. So I had to increase my awareness probably the past 10 years. And wow, I've seen a lot of uniqueness in wildlife, and I'm pretty familiar with the wilderness, and so it's new. It's a new awareness and a new sensitivity and a value system.
Right.
Yeah, environmental awareness.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think of the history of Elk Island Park. They waited a long time for that buffalo herd bison herd to replenish itself, but that's 100 years.
Wow.
100 years and it's still there, but we still have elk. Feeling good about it. And when I look at the UN now, they're building parks and UNESCO parks and UN city parks, and Edmonton's a part of that process, that the United Nations wants parks.
Right.
So that we can preserve the wilderness. And
right.
So we're just part of that. And when I look at my work with the WHO and the UN, I'm with an organization that values culture, but they value land and people and culture.
Right.
And they've gone from human rights, which is law, to ethics. Like, how do we do this in a good way, the right way? Right. We're just learning.
Right.
And so the Métis, I'm so proud of them, have defined, we have to have self-determination. We have to go for wholeness. We have to have a place. There's a place for everybody. And we have to include others.
Right.
And so those are the principles, the ethics. And then from that, we can build health.
Right.
Like if they said, no, our way is whole. We have to be whole inside. That's healthy.
Right.
And so it's law and health. And I go, well, how many countries put law and health together?
I know, right?
Health law. So we have health laws with our environment.
Right.
Because we're healthy that way.
That's right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate our conversation. I've learned lots. Reach out to Dr. Shaun Hains. I'll put her contact information in the description below this video. Thank you. If you haven't already subscribed to this channel, I hope you do. We want to bring new guests every week that you can learn from. We want to be a platform that gets the word out. When you subscribe to this channel, it lets YouTube know that people value what we have to say, and they will spread the word even more. So we've come to that time again. It's the end of this week's podcast. This is Cindy Chase. Have a great day. Bye.